Yesterday, we saw $1 billion to help women escape violent relationships, and that'll form part of a cross-government response to domestic violence. Age verification measures will also be trialled for online pornography, while deep fake content is set to be criminalised. It comes after yesterday's National Cabinet meeting between the Prime Minister and the state and territory leaders. Joining me live now is Independent MP Di Lee. Di, thanks so much for your time. As our correspondent Trudy pointed out, a lot of these measures don't actually help women now. It's about a year until they come into effect, or at least a couple of months.
Yes, my understanding is over 5 years, and it's not going to come into effect, I think, till next year in July 2025. Look, Laura, I think we know that rates of domestic violence are more likely to increase when families are under household financial pressures. And this is according to the Women in Economics Network. And I think that we are now all facing these cost of living pressures, financial stress, and in families, especially in Western Sydney, in low socioeconomic communities. These pressure will put a lot of, and I think we will see a rise in increase in family domestic violence. I think the issue with this funding announcement, while it's welcome to help women escape. Now, many women find it hard to leave domestic violence household, first of all. But the thing is, the sector has been crying out for the frontline services, early intervention for years. So governments, multiple governments across all levels, should be aware of this issue. And no funding for such as shelters, such as refuge for women and children. Last night I had a youth advisory committee, and they raised this with me. It's about places where women and children can move to because they're constantly on the move. And where's the funding for housing or temporary accommodation for women and children, for instance? Early intervention. Some of the young boys in my youth advisory committee suggested to talk about there's no programs at a school level to support school to teach young men and young girls to obviously have a social interaction, respect, and communication. So while we give the money at the top here, the problem here is on the grassroots level. So no one's talking about that. But the sector has been crying out and has been informing multiple governments about this issue, and they're really overstretched. So how is this another program going to address that? I don't know how the government think this is going to address that whole issue of domestic violence.
Yeah, it's intractable, to be honest, and I don't think it would be fixed entirely, and governments can't be the only ones to be able to fix this. They have all the cash, of course. But
frontline services, I think
that's right.
If we're talking about domestic violence on the increase, we need to really focus on early intervention programs. Schools have to be supported to provide, programs to continue to work with young people, young boys and young girls, first of all. And refuges, community service organisations, especially culturally, linguistically diverse communities, as well as Indigenous communities. So it's very important because those communities, those women are so vulnerable. Accessibility to programs, accessibility to temporary housing accommodation, that is where the money should go. That is where a lot of women are suffering, but can't get out of the household, don't know where to go to, and English or cultural barriers are preventing them from seeking help. So what is the government going to do about that?
Yeah, they didn't really make a lot of progress on bail laws or electronic monitoring as well. From your perspective, is that important as something that can be done more immediately?
Look, I think I visited a correctional service in our electorate last week, and they are dealing with about 500, people charged with domestic violence, but they are on bail. These men don't have proper programs and intervention to help them, and accommodation is another issue because then they're gone back into the community. So what would that mean for their families? So early intervention there as well is very important. And they're overstretched. They don't have enough staff. They don't have enough money to provide programs to educate these men. And they don't have accommodations for the families of these men. So that is an issue. I see it on the front line all the time, Laura. I go out there and I speak to the community, and I'm thinking, why isn't the money going down to these kind of
Yeah.
frontline workers, the support services that are desperately needed by these communities and these organisations? Really, it's right there in front of your nose. The government should see this. They are aware of this. The community service have informed multiple governments over the years, so it's not new.
No, it's certainly not. Daily, always good to talk to you, and we love your passion as always.
Thank you, Laura.